Yes, and so to go further, I've dealt with the emotion. I have emotional stress, mental stress, of issues with my career, the physical stress. The emotional stress are anger, guilt, sadness, fears that I have to deal with, just the career pressures and the challenges of deadlines. Sometimes, again, having to come home and work extra hours after working in the office at 10 hours a day. So those are the type of stresses that I deal with in my personal line of business. Then there's other types of stress that you can sometimes have, acute stress, and that's the type of stress that is just something that doesn't last for very long. For instance, if you're caught in a traffic jam and you're running late for an appointment, and you're watching the clock and you have about 5 minutes to get there and you still have about maybe 20 more minutes to drive, that would be considered an acute stress. Then we're talking about chronic stress. When you're dealing with chronic stress, this is stress that lasts over a long period of time. This is the type of stress that, if you're chronically stressful, will cause you to have chronic health conditions and diseases. So those are just several different types of stresses that people in my line of business deal with. Then I want to speak to you about how I deal successfully and unsuccessfully with stressful issues or situations in my life. I would just like to give you an example of how I dealt with a stressful situation in my life. I would say somewhat successfully. My mother passed away not too long ago, and it was an extremely stressful time for me in my life. And I would say I was borderlining into chronic stress. And I began overeating and crying constantly, so I'm dealing with the sadness, the fears, the anxiety, the loneliness. I disconnected from my family and friends. I just began getting into a depressed state of mind. And I realized in order for me to overcome this and not make myself sick, I needed to go and talk to a professional. So at that time, I decided to go and talk to a psychologist to help me work through my grief issues while dealing with mourning the loss of my mother. So that was a time I can say that I was successful in dealing with a stressful situation. I still battle with that loss from time to time, but I will say that it's not chronic. And I would also say that I dealt with that situation with heartedness. And I say I did that because I realized that this is a challenge in life that I had to look at positively, because God blessed me in my faith. I believe in God, and I don't know what your religious thoughts are, but I'm speaking personally of mine. And I believe that losing my mother was something that I had to accept and realize that it was a positive thing that I was able to have her in my life for the time that I had, and to have such a wonderful mother. And as you can see, there's a picture behind her of me, so I honor her in that way. I'm now able to look at that picture. I had it put away for quite some time while I was working through my stressful situation. Then I would say there was a time that I may have unsuccessfully dealt with a stressful situation, and I still had to work on that. And that is a stress that I deal with from time to time, again relating to my job, where I live in Atlanta, and our traffic here is noted as one of the worst traffic areas in the United States. And a ride for me to get to my office at work should usually take me about 40 minutes. And today, just itself, it took me 2.5 hours to get home from work. So I have to find out a way where I have to go to work. I work from home a couple days a week, but I have to go into the office 3 days a week. So I have to find ways to deal with that stress of my drive. So what I began to do is put on nice soft music and listen to the music while I'm driving. Repeat affirmations for myself. Think about what I'm going to cook when I get home from work. Now that the holidays are upon me, I'm thinking about maybe preparing for the holiday. But I'm just now, with doing this project, realizing that I have to deal with my traffic situation better, and I've been unsuccessful in that in the past. And I would also like to say that some of the strategies, other strategies that I believe I can use or that you can use in dealing with stress is take a nice brisk walk sometimes in the evening. If you're at work and you're dealing with a stressful situation, get up and walk around your desk. Get with a couple of your coworkers and just sit and have some casual conversation. Sometimes that'll break up the monotony. When you're dealing with personal situations, sometimes to deal with stress, you can read a book. You can exercise. Those are just some strategies that you can deal with when you're dealing with stressful situations. You can always look for a mental health care professional as well if you feel that your condition is becoming chronic, a stressful chronic situation. In conclusion, I would just like to say that I am trying very hard in my personal life to become an optimist, and also realizing that when life gives you lemons, you have to turn it into lemonade. As long as you will live, you will have some type of stress in your life. It can be a positive stress and it can be a negative stress, but your emotions will help you get through that and keep you from dealing with any type of chronic physical conditions that can harm you and in the long term possibly take your life. I thank you so much for listening to this presentation, and I hope that there's something that you got out of it. If anyone has any questions, I'm free to answer those questions for you at this time. What questions do you have for me? Thank you very much. There's been no questions. Instructor, again, I thank you so very much for giving me the opportunity to do this presentation for you. I hope I've mastered it at this time, and I've touched on every thing that you've asked me to add to my presentation. Thank you so very much, and I appreciate your time. Good night.